This presentation is on dealing with string delimiters, specifically on dealing with double quotes and single quotes and having them mixed up within a string and getting it to print out correctly. So I have a simple form here where I'm just going to enter my first name. But before I run this form, I want you to see what the goal is. For every first name that is entered, I want it to say, hey, in my case, Steve. If it was you, it could be Bob or Jane. Whatever the first name that is entered, I want it to display. Hey, Steve! Exclamation point. I said, don't do that. Notice that there's double quotes as a part of what I want to see. There's double quotes printed, and there's a single quote that I want to see as well, outputted. This isn't just a quote to show you that the string's been delimited. I want to see this on the browser window. So let's see if we can get that to happen. Let's go back to the form. I'll put in my name. Click the Submit button. Bam! We get an error. A parse error. Remember, parse errors are syntax errors. And it's a string error of some kind, and it's found within the program, the PHP program, on line 20, or thereabouts. Let's go take a look at the code. First, we'll look at the form just briefly. First name field is the input. That's the name of it. So let's go over to the PHP. Now, I've repeated what my goal is here. I've commented this out, but the goal is, hey, Steve, I said, don't do that. So let's see how I attempted to do it. First, I got the first name field with the post, and then I tried to write it out. Hey, first name, I said, don't do that. And it looks like I've kind of done it right. I want to print a paragraph, and I want to print this quote, and the single quote here, but it's not working. It's saying bad syntax. And if you'll notice here in TextBad, the colors are a little bit not what I would expect. So here's what you need to understand about the print statement, or really any string that you would be storing into a variable, is it starts with either a single quote or a double quote being the delimiter. Now once it recognizes that, it says, I'm going to keep processing the text as a string, as a bit of text, until I find the closing single quote or double quote delimiter. Now it's smart enough to know that whatever you start with, you must end with. So here, I'm starting to delimit the string with a double quote. So the computer comes along, and it starts moving through string. And it gets to this next double quote, and it says, okay, I'm done. That's the end of the string. It'll process that part just fine. And then it gets to the letter H, and the word hey. And it's basically saying, I don't know what to do with that. Hey isn't a function. Hey isn't a PHP command. I was expecting something else. I probably should have gotten a semicolon to end that print statement. So what I need to do is I need to tell PHP that this quote over here, this second quote, is not a delimiter. It's part of the string. And the way we do that is something called an escape character. Really, it's just a backslash. Let's put that in there. If I put a backslash in front of every double quote or single quote that I want to be part of the string, then it'll process it correctly. It'll say, oh, that's not an ending delimiter. That's just another character. Happens to be a quote. So what? So let me go ahead and do this throughout the entire string. This quote is something they want to see. So backslash goes in front of it. I said, double quote, that's part of the string too, so I need a backslash in front of that. Now I have a single quote here. Do I need to put a backslash in front of that? Technically, no, because PHP is not looking for a single quote to end this delimiter, because I started with a double quote. So I can just leave that as is. Let's go to this one. This last quote here at the end of the string is part of the string. Now hopefully, I've saved this. If I've done it correctly, it should process this correctly. Let's go back to the form. I'm going to hit the back button, refresh, just to be on the safe side. And there it is. Hey, Steve, I said, don't do that. It processed the double quotes here as part of the string and didn't see it as a delimiter. And as I mentioned, the single quote in here, make this a little larger for you, the single quote in here is processed just fine. I want to look at single quotes now for a second. One way people try to get out of this problem when we have a bunch of double quotes is they say, well, heck, I'll just make it a single quote to delimit the string instead of a double quote, and then it won't get confused. There's a single quote, and I'll put a single quote here. I've taken out all of the backslashes that I had before, those escape characters. Now this would work if I didn't have this single quote here. If it said do not do that, it should work. In fact, I'll go ahead and change that quickly. Now there's nothing about the string to confuse with the delimiters. It begins and ends with a single quote, so all of those double quotes should be fine. I'll save that, go back to the form, back it up, run it. A first name, I said do not do that. Well, it worked pretty good, but there's a little problem here. Do you remember that I said way back when that a dollar first name that's inside of a single quote won't work? It won't be interpolated. It won't be turned into its value. And it didn't. So let's go back and look at the code. Because this begins with a single quote and ends with a single quote, it doesn't know what to do with this first name. It just says, well, I'll just accept that as what you wanted to see. So one of the ways out of this, of course, is concatenation. Single quote, a dot, go to the end here, a dot, single quote. Now what I have right now is I have 3 strings. This string to the beginning and ending single quote, concatenated with a variable, which happens to be a string, concatenated with another beginning and ending single quote, that string. And I didn't have to use any backslashes at all. Let's try this first to make sure that it works. Always good to test. Refresh, submit. Okay, we're back to where we want to be. But I wanted to have it say don't do that, not do not do that. So if I put don't, we've got a problem again. It's going to see that as the end of the delimiter to this string and then not know what to do with T and D and so forth. So here, I put the backslash character in front of the single quote, and it should say, all right, that single quote is not a delimiter, it's part of the string. Let's see if I got this to work correctly. I go back, refresh, submit, and we've got it working great.